Good afternoon, Husky fans. Thank you for tuning in to the 8th episode of Husky Dash with your hosts at Nathan Mathisen and myself at 9_3/4. Today we're going to be diving into what the Huskies schedule, what does the Husky schedule look like? My apologies. A funny segment called Stats 101 where we break down some ESPN FPI stats, as well as players opting out, opting in, whether they should stay and whether they should go. As a reminder, please feel free to drop a comment or even just say hello, and we'll make sure we cover our segments, anything that comes up in the chat. Now then, as a surprise to everybody, myself included, we have DAWG Snacks back with some really interesting news around the nation. In terms of player news, most recently we've had 3 players within the Pac-12 opt back into the Pac-12 after opting out. Cal DB Cameron Bynum, Oregon DB Diamador Lenoir, and Boise State graduate transfer safety, big title there, Jordan Happel, who has joined Oregon secondary. JUCO DB Antonio Brooks has committed to Arizona for the 2021 season, and Oregon linebacker Andrew Johnson has entered the transfer portal. So that's big news. Some faculty farces that have happened. Wazoo AD Pat Chun said that the schedule they received is not the one that he voted for, and he didn't seem very happy about it. And sad news for coaches. Arizona fullbacks coach Kevin Sumlin tested positive for COVID. Not fullbacks coach, sorry, football coach Kevin Sumlin. In terms of UW, Arkansas used our defense to stop Mike Leach in their 21-14 win over Mississippi State, so go Huskies. Huskies are starting fall camp practices October 9th, so that's good news. Bad news again, UW's Greek Row had 36 new confirmed cases of COVID over the weekend, reaching a total of 164 as of 4 p.m. Monday. And a funny-ish news, still COVID-related, the entire SMU student section during their game against Memphis was kicked out of the game just into the back end of the first half for not wearing masks or adhering to social distancing rules. Please wear your masks and stay 6 feet apart. Let's be safe. Let's be smart. Now, into our first segment where all of this really fun stuff actually starts taking place is scheduling talks. We're going to start looking at the schedule. We're going to look over our old predictions, crossover game, who we would have rather seen. All of it and everything within it gets broken down for you guys by me and Nathan. Nathan, you want to start us off with this?
Yeah, sure. So we got the 6-game schedule, and we'll be playing all our teams in the North, and then we've got the one crossover game, and then there'll also be the one seeding game for week 7, I believe it is, where the Pac-12 championship will be played, and then the other teams 1 through 12 will play a team matched up. So we won't be playing at least until the seeding games, Colorado, UCLA, USC, Utah, or ASU. But we will get Oregon, Cal, Stanford, OSU, Arizona, and all those fun division rivalries. Starting off, of course, with Cal, which I think that's going to be a real entertaining and real close game, especially with how it's gone the last couple of years with us being on maybe the losing end, especially last year. That was a real tough game. What are you looking forward towards with this schedule? What's your game you're looking at?
You know, there's 2 games really here. I think weeks 2 through 5. So those conference games, that crossover game, aren't going to be that big of a deal. The home and away switching for them is fine. I don't think the Wazoo game is anything to worry about. Maybe need to worry about Stanford, but those 2 big games, the one versus Cal, which starts our regular season, and then the one against Oregon, which ends our regular season. If we have any hope, if we want any chance of making it to the playoffs, those 2 games have got to be wins.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. I think Cal and Oregon, the 2 games farthest apart for us, are both the biggest games. I mean, in between you've got OSU, who that should be an easy win for us, and then Arizona, another easy win, I would say, based on history. And then you got Wazoo, which it could be a close game with a lot of new pieces for both our teams, but I still think that UW's got the edge there. And then with Stanford, that's going to be a close one, I think. But again, we're looking at Cal and Oregon as probably our 2 biggest competitors, I would say. And so if we can win both those games, if we don't lose those easy games, then I could see us going undefeated in the regular season, I guess, and then playing the Pac-12 championship.
Yeah, and the Cal game, I mean, if you guys remember back, I think it was like episode 3, episode 4, where we broke down a hypothetical schedule as well as matchups, point differentials, win-loss. We actually projected us losing to Cal 3-14. However, I would like to change that to a win because of some new information I've learned. Not new information to everybody, just me being slow. Chase Garbers is out indefinitely due to a head, and I think it was a lower leg, maybe upper leg injury. Um, and it's going to be it's going to be hopefully a strong start to what may be a weaker Cal team, seeing as they have been getting to practices. They got their practice schedules and their like practice allowances back a lot later than UW. It being like a COVID season. I mean, I hate that this is our first game if it were a normal season, but with everything being factored into it, with COVID practices and all of that, I really think this one's going to come out to be a dub. And if we can win this, I definitely think that's going to be just enough of a step and a footstep forward to where it leads us to an undefeated season.
Yeah, I can see this. And again, chat, if you've got any comments on the schedule, feel free to pitch them in and we'll see what we think of them. And yeah, again, to your point, Cal, if we can get off on the right foot against Cal, then the momentum should carry us through. Looking at the Oregon game, week 6, I think that'll be tough. I would have much rather played them earlier in the season, especially with them having all these new pieces. They did get that one defensive back, but they still did lose 3 of their defensive backs and all their alignment. And so we got a question from Matt in the chat. The question is, who is the QB going to be for UW?
I can answer this one, actually. Okay, so sadly, quick answer is we don't know yet. Jimmy Lake and all of the other head coaches around the Pac-12, they all hosted a sort of like webinar for the media today. That went from about 10 to 5, each coach getting about 30 minutes. And listening to him talk about kind of the quarterback battle and the battle across all the positions, is he's leaving them up pretty open. Any roster specific questions you guys might have, please drop them in chat today so me and Nathan can ask them at his personal press conference this coming Friday. There, we're hoping to find out some more information about who the starting quarterback is going to be, what defensive replacements are going to be in terms of like the secondary, the D line. That's where we're hoping to see all of our roster questions and concerns get answered.
Yeah, and to add on to that, you're a Dylan Morris fan. So he also mentioned how Coach Lake might employ a multi-quarterback strategy, especially week 1 against Cal, just to see who performs the best. So we might actually not know the set and point starter until maybe the day before Cal, and it might even change throughout the season depending on how guys perform.
Yeah, a lot of this is still up in the air too because we haven't started padded practices yet. Those are starting either end of this week or beginning of next week, if I remember
Friday,
correctly.
I think is the first practice, but I'm not sure if it's pads.
And Coach Lake was really, really stressing the idea that it's going to be up to the quarterbacks to decide, not the coaches, is kind of how he phrased it. It's going to be what quarterback wants to step up, what quarterback wants to go ahead and lead, and what quarterback really meshes well with the team. I think the Cal game, if it ends up not being a blowout or a really big slugfest, you guys are all going to get to see, us included, the quarterbacks getting rotated in and out. And we'll definitely get to see who meshes well. We'll be able to do pros and cons for those in a post-game show as well. I'm really excited, looking forward to that Cal game. I'm also really looking forward to this Oregon game.
Yeah, I think the Oregon game, especially with Oregon being kind of nationally thought of as a team, the best team out of the Pac-12. I think in the coaches poll or some poll, they're ranked as the most likely team to win the Pac-12 championship. So it's going to be really fun to see the Huskies go up against a team that's thought of as a top-tier team.
Yeah, and I don't know. I'm still sticking by what I said in week 4 when we were doing those hypothetical games. This game is going to turn into a slugfest where it's each team's defense's game to lose and it's going to be each team's offense's game to win. It's going to turn into what defense, what secondary can hold on the longest and can hold on the toughest. It's going to be really physical. I mean, there's going to be a lot on the line because if everything goes the way we want it to for both us and Oregon, it's going to be 2 5-0 teams coming in to see who gets to compete for the Pac-12 championship and who gets to go on to the CFP.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better. It's going to be a slugfest. It's going to be who can win in the trenches better, maybe who's who's able to make the game-winning field goal. It could come down to. Hopefully,
Yeah, in
it's an
terms of
exciting game when we get to it.
yeah, I'm absolutely sure it's going to be an exciting game. One thing I wanted to point out about the Stanford game, which I thought was really funny when I was digging into this, ESPN FPI, which we were about to get into, they had a circle of poo kind of with us, Stanford, and Cal. They had us projected to beat Stanford. They had Stanford projected to beat Cal, and Cal projected to beat us. And so let's say that actually happens, we're not going to have any idea who comes out on top.
Yeah, it's going to be a close race it's just going to be the better team, the better coach team, I think, coming out on top in the Pac-12.
Yeah, absolutely. And then just to touch on week 7, I'm projecting that game to be against ASU or USC, no matter who comes out of it from the North. That's just what's seeming to be the most likely. And if you guys want some reasons for that, we can break them down right now with Stats 101, first class of the year, at least for Husky Dash. And this is all according to ESPN's FPI rankings. Any opinions you hear are going to be from us. Any stats you hear are going to be from them. And to start it off, we're currently ranked with 0 games played in the 2020 season, 30th in the country, which could be a lot worse.
Yeah, I think the ESPN FPI ranking of 30, it's the 4th best in the Pac-12. ESPN's got Oregon at 6, USC at 12, and Utah at 23. And then just nipping at our tails, Stanford's 31. So ESPN's really thinking it's going to be close between Stanford and UW. And then they kind of think there's a much separate tier with Oregon and USC kind of at the top, and then Utah closer towards 4th with UW. But I mean, I think it's really tough to look at these rankings with no games played for us. Really, it's just based off of talent. And as we know, sometimes talent doesn't perform well on the field.
Yeah. And I mean, the stats, I mean, I don't think anyone's happy with these stats unless you're Oregon or unless you're USC right now. Yeah. I mean, it's just absolutely ridiculous. And not only that, the premise for them is pretty ridiculous as well. One, no one in the Pac-12 has played a game yet. And you're calculating this based off of like nationwide average CFB teams competing against the top 25. Like that just doesn't really make any sense when some of the biggest schools in the college football scene haven't played a game yet. I'm not trying to like blow smoke up the Pac-12's kind of like how great or how bad we are. I'm just saying you have 12 teams out of your schedule that haven't played a game, and you're somehow throwing out these incredibly accurate stats. So it's really going to come down to what this first game is going to be. I do think that some of the really interesting stats came in their projected win-loss records. Did you have any thoughts on those?
Yeah, the projected win-loss, they had UW going 4-3, which I could easily see that as a possibility. I hope it isn't. But I mean, looking at it, I'd say Oregon State, Arizona, and Wazoo mark those up as 3 wins. They then Cal, Stanford, Oregon, those could easily be losses. And then the wild card would then be a win. So I could easily see that as being the record, depending on how the new offense works here at Washington and the losses on the defense with Joe Tryon and Levi Onwuzurike. But I'm hopeful that's not the case. But 4-3 is what ESPN's projecting UW to go, and it's a possibility. I mean, you look at their projections for Oregon and USC, 6-1. I mean, that would be Pac-12. Larry Scott would not like that, as that'd mean no way is a Pac-12 school getting into the college football playoffs with 1 loss and only 6 wins. So that's a nightmare for the Pac-12, and then Utah 5-2, and again Stanford right up next to Washington with 4-3.
Yeah. One of the crazy things too, with just like chances of winning the Pac-12 outright, they had us listed at about 3% exactly. They had Oregon at 52%. They had USC at 29.9%. I don't know why they didn't just say 30%. I think because of stats and the way you need to add up to 100, they had to make room for Wazoo's 0.1% chance to win the Pac-12. So they kind of just took a chip off of USC. That's not my stat. I probably would have listed it the same. ESPN FPI has Wazoo with a 0.1% chance to win the Pac-12. So I'm not going to complain about that. But then again, I'm not in STEM anymore, so who knows?
Yeah, it's tough figuring out the statistics. The 3% is I'd say really low. I would put UW up more. I mean, not like 20% or anything like that, but maybe 10%, maybe up towards where Utah is at 9%. Just because UW has great coaching, UW has some really great talent. It's just a matter of them performing on the field up to expectations, I feel.
Yeah, and like if you think about it, if you're like breaking down all the stats, I think it comes out to be about 8.3% if you split it up amongst all 12 teams equally. And so you're looking at us being almost 5.5% down off of what should be like the statistical average or median. I mean, again, I'm not in STEM, so I don't know. So I mean, I at least would have like seen to see something closer to the upper like single digits, maybe 8, maybe 9, possibly 10 plus. But just getting a 3% listing there for a chance of winning the Pac-12 just honestly feels like a slight. Like that hurts ESPN. Like,
Yeah, the stat though that I kind of really really was intrigued with, maybe not necessarily just for UWs, but was the chance of a Pac-12 school making the college football playoffs. I thought that one was really interesting with ESPN. I mean, UW, they gave us a 0.2% chance, so they're not believing in us very well. But what I was more shocked about was how high Oregon was with a 30% chance, 30.7% chance to make the college football playoffs, which I just think that's way too high for any Pac-12 school with how the schedules is and how we're only playing 7 games compared to these other schools playing 10 games, 10 plus games. Just I don't see a Pac-12 school having a possibility of making the college football playoffs. That's my opinion. Other people have different opinions. But if I was ESPN, I would have much lowered that 30% down to more 15%. Give Oregon a little shot. I mean, they're supposed to be the best school in the Pac-12, so maybe they go 7-0. Maybe they sneak into the 4 seed in the college football playoffs. But at 30%, that's just too high for me.
yeah, no, that's a crazy big number. And if you want to take it back to like big picture too, in terms of like the entire, in terms of the entire Power Five and all 5 of those conferences, there's some like plus minus 2 teams, maybe about 60 teams within the Power Five. And when you're giving one team within the Pac-12 a 30% chance of what was it going to the CFP, right?
Yeah, just making
Yeah,
it into the four
yeah,
four spots.
giving one team out of the Pac-12, a conference that hasn't played any games yet, a number as large as 30% for making the playoffs. Also, when they know we only have a 7-week schedule, I mean, you've got to have questions. And I'm personally wondering whether or not maybe the ESPN FPI committee or whoever does that stuff needs to go back to school like the rest of us.
Yeah, he might be good friends with Larry Scott or something like that. He's might be some Pac-12 fandom going on in ESPN FPI with that numbers. I mean, looking at let's see, the chance of winning the division, just the North. Let's look at that stat a bit. So they gave Washington an 8.4% chance to win the North. Oregon, 77.6%. ESPN's thinking this is a one-dog race over here. Just Oregon leading the way in the North. I mean, that's like almost a guarantee ESPN thinks Oregon's going to win it, which again, we've been saying it over and over again on this show. Oregon has lost a lot of key players. I get it. They've got great talent, but it's hard to replace 5 offensive linemen, 3 defensive backs. That's tough to replace.
Yeah, I actually got to hear a small snippet at the back end of Oregon's head coach's webinar. And that was the last question that was asked to him was, how do you replace your entire offensive line? How do you replace those 3 DBs? How do you replace all of these positions that have just disappeared over the course of a summer? And he essentially answered, if my memory recalls, hard work is pretty much what he answered. Hard work and teamwork. So I guess
Hard
week
work and
6.
teamwork.
I guess as week 6 rolls around, we'll see if they worked hard enough and whether their team's meshing. And at that same token, I've got to hope that, our team itself is working hard and that our team is finally meshing with a new coach, a new OC, a bunch of players come. I mean, there's battles all over the place. And so that's all up in the air. And again, like just a disclaimer, I guess, for everybody with these ESPN FPI stats, like these are all done during COVID. Everybody's coming back to school. Everybody's trying to figure out how to play football together. Sorry, and COVID-19 and the situation regarding these stats and the CFB season in general this year, I think makes these projections/predictions some of the most paper thin that I've seen in like my recallable history/memory. So we have another question from Matt. Thank you. That's 4 in a row. Would you look at? I think that's more than we've had in the entirety of Husky Dash. Who is Oregon's QB? They don't have one. Sam
Heward, he said Sam Heward would beat them all out. So yeah, Oregon, another thing against them, they just lost Justin Herbert to the NFL, their star quarterback. So right now, I'm not an Oregon Duck football expert, but I think Tyler Show is their starting quarterback for this year, based on what little I've seen. So I don't know anything about him. I don't know if he's any good. We'll have to wait until week 1 and see how they perform.
Yeah, we have. I just have here right now. Oregon head football coach Mario Cristobal on Fox's Big Noon Kickoff said that heading in, Tyler Shaw, without question, leads for the job. I've never heard the kid's name. I don't know who he is. He can't be that great if he hasn't made the news up just a couple hours north. I mean, we'll get to see week 1. And I've been saying it all week. I've been saying it last week. I've been saying it the week before. Week one. I mean, everything's up in the air until we get to see all 12 teams play. And we're going to get to see. Okay, one thing I cannot believe this is that they had Utah ranked above us in pretty much every stat. Like, that just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, Utah lost some key players, especially their star running back, Zach Moss, which that'll be a big loss for Utah. I mean, I get it, UW also lost a lot of key players. So, I mean, we'll really just have to wait until 2-3 weeks into the season and see how these teams with all the new pieces, new coaches, new styles are actually performing.
I will say, though, it is an interesting point that you brought up, Sam Heward. He's the 2021 recruit, I think, coming up. I haven't gotten to look at any of his film yet. They are saying that he kind of like has this game, he has this skill that separates him as an elite prospect, and that's why he's listed as a 5-star. I don't know yet if Sam Heward has that freshman level talent to just beat out quarterbacks in the Pac-12 already. I mean, we've seen crazier things. We've seen players go from, maybe not in the football world, but we've seen players in other sports, possibly football as well, go from high school straight to the professional leagues. So it's not totally out of the question that a freshman commit comes in his first season and just absolutely crushes it. Again, week 1. That'll be week 1 of 2021. That's another episode in the future. But week one, baby. That's where all the questions get answered. Now then, we got to talk about one that's a little more opinion orientated. Definitely not really any stats in here, and it's about the player opt-ins and opt-outs. A lot of these seniors and juniors had no idea we were going to have a season. It was pretty much like just written off the table. Like, this fall isn't going to occur. We're not going to get football being played in college, at least. And a lot of these guys have gone on to declare for the combine and the draft. They've picked up agents, and now the big question is how many of these guys are going to come back, and if they're even going to be allowed to come back. Nathan, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a really tough question. Some of these guys opted out all the way back like in early August when there wasn't looking like a season at all, and now here we are a few months later, and the season's coming up in less than a month, or just about 1 month exactly, I think, from today. And it's a tough question. I mean, previously, the NCAA's always been a very big strict stickler for rules and eligibility, but I mean, recently with this, they've actually kind of laid back a bit, especially with Rashawn Bateman, who is a Minnesota wide receiver. He actually opted out in August, and he signed an agent. He was actually being given money for training and all his stuff for preparing for the draft. And then he decided after the Big Ten started a season, he's like, I want to come back and play. So he petitioned to the NCAA. He sent them a letter or something, and they got back to him and said, yeah, sure, you've got another year of eligibility. You can play. So I think COVID has really affected the NCAA's stickler for rules, kind of, and they're kind of lessening up on these eligibility concerns because of so many unknowns with COVID and everything.
Yeah, and I mean there was precedent even before him as well with Michael Turk when he declared himself for the 2020 draft as a sophomore, like way back before I think even COVID started coming about. Interesting fact, the man dropped 25 on the bench press as a punter as a sophomore. So congrats to you, Michael Turk. I will applaud you for that. Had an agent, went undrafted, and then was allowed to go back to ASU, all because he wasn't, NCAA just ruled that he wasn't allowed to go to the pro days. He wasn't allowed to get those private training sessions, all because of COVID. And I honestly think that that's all fair. The one thing that was up in the air for me was that if these guys had started receiving benefits or getting money, that was my big question mark about whether or not it'd be fair at that point to let them back in. But again, I suppose with what was his name again?
Rashad Bateman, Minnesota wide receiver.
With the Minnesota receiver Rashad Bateman coming back after even getting money, I definitely think that I actually think that that's going to start pulling a lot more guys back. Who might have said, hey, you know what? I've gotten my pre-combine grade from my agent or some guys who were like scouting me or helping me out with training. I'm not really happy with that. You know, I've made some dough on the side. I wouldn't mind going back for another year of college, you know, getting that education, getting that extra year of playing on the field, maybe to develop outside of that like NFL eye. And I think those are the guys that absolutely should go. As well as them, freshmen and sophomores, if you guys have declared for the combine, I don't know what you're doing. Go back to college ball, please. Like that's 2 more years a lot of these grown men now have on you, and you're trying to compete with them. And I think it's just absolutely crazy. Sorry. And the ones who probably, oh, excuse me, sorry, they would have had to have been at the university for at least 3 years to declare. So it would be any of the ones who had redshirted as a freshman or sophomore, possibly a junior, and gotten those 3 years in. That would have worked out a lot better if I had known that beforehand. Shout outs to the team sitting behind the camera. The other point with all of that is I also don't see why you'd want to give up another year of scholarship if you're on it with like, that's free education, that's free training, that's free facilities. You have all of that going for you. And I mean, it's sad to say everyone's college career, everyone's football career eventually ends. Like that sun sets. I'm sure your high school coaches have said it over and over and over again. Mine sure did. Eventually your football career is over, and what you're going to have left over are the relationships you've built, the education received, and the skills, ethics, and morals you developed with your team. I don't know if you have the same opinion as me, Nathan, but that's just how I personally feel about taking the season off.
Yeah, it's similar. But before, with what we've been saying about players opting back in, before any of the Husky fans here in the chat get too excited thinking maybe Levi Onwuzurike or Joe Tryon will come back, Jimmy Lake at an earlier press conference said that neither one of the 2 players who opted out will be returning to the squad. So we won't be getting back those 2 stars on the defense. But in good news, we did keep Elijah Molden, who that's huge news with him being such a great defensive back for the Huskies. But yeah, getting to your point of them opting out when they have free education, I think it's a tough decision for these guys like Levi Onwuzurike and Joe Tryon. They had some great years. Joe Tryon had really one great year, and he's capitalizing on that. He's got great measurables. He's 6'5", and he's got good draft grades. So he's got to capitalize on that, I think. So I understand why he's leaving. He's trying to get the money. That's what it is. He wants the money. Same for Levi Onwuzurike. He wants the money. He's spent 3 years here at UW, I feel. He started the past 2. He had some great numbers. PFF loved him. Top 10 at defensive tackle and defensive end grades. So these guys, I mean, it's a tough decision for them. Do you keep the free education just in case your NFL career flops, or do you risk it? You go now when your name's hot on the trainers and the scouts and try and make that money.
Yeah, it's going to be a big question for all those guys, and they have not much longer to think about it and make decisions. I mean, I have a personal opinion too that I think for some of these guys who don't really have those immeasurables, those like intangible things where they have just like a high football IQ, the couple of months where they're strictly training for the combine or doing some like halvesy pro days, like it might actually be a detriment to their skill levels and their eventual combine grades. But that just about wraps it up for today's episode. Once again, I'm Joseph Claypoole, and this is Nathan Mathisen. I'm going to apologize ahead of time because I felt like today's episode might have been a little down on energy, so that's our fault. That won't happen again, I promise to everybody. You can follow us on our different social medias with the ads that you see on screen right now. Now, we're just a small part of the Dash Sports family, so if you'd like to meet the rest of the crew, please check out our website, dashsports.tv, as well as our partners' website, sportspac12.com, where you can also read further into some of the segments from our weekly shows, a lot of which have been written by our very own Nathan Mathisen. If you'd like to revisit the best moments of today's episode, head over to our website where you can find clips, quips, tips, rips, terrible jokes, and as many full episodes as you can stand, all in one place, all for free, dashsports.tv. Yes, that rhymed on purpose. We'll see you next week, but for now, this is Husky Dash signing off.